Social media trends and magazine headlines might have you believing that we're having more sex than ever. If you dig deeper into the research, the opposite may be true. So we've got Jess back, and we're going to discuss this. We're going to talk about sex.
Everyone has something to say about it. Twitter recently revealed that Euphoria has become the most tweeted about show in this decade.
I'd like to formally apologize. I've ruined the culture.
Welcome to Ms. Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the TV characters who took what felt like forever to finally kiss on screen.
When our show premiered, like a show with trans women, black women, Latina women, Asian women, women who were in their 20s and women who were in their 80s, just every kind of woman you could think of on television sharing space and having humanity that didn't exist before.
How do you think pop culture has played a role in where we are in our evolution of sex and understanding it? And also, where do you think pop culture should go and who should be propped up maybe?
I think most folks I work with learn about sex and relationships from two places: their parents, if their parents are around, and pop culture, right? Like, I legit have had people tell me about, how they compare themselves to Hallmark movies. I was like, really, Hallmark? Like, that's where we're going with this? Like, that was the bar you set? Come on. And so, yeah, do I think that it plays a role? Absolutely. Of course. We take in everything. We're like big sponges, Alexandra. We take in everything we see. And I think some of us are more discerning than others, but at the end of the day, we take in what we see. I think a lot of the archetypes tend to be pretty solo, right? Pretty individualist. Again, I do think it's changing. I am an optimist about this. I don't think that, we're doomed and we're never going to heal. I think we can heal. I think this is especially hard for the people I work with who are queer, right? Like, if the examples that straight folks get are limited to what they see in pop culture, then you bet the same is true for queer folks, except there's just so many fewer examples. That too is also changing. We're starting to see queerness normalized in pop culture, but it's still, like, by comparison, it's not even close, right? I think I've maybe ever only seen like 2 examples of healthy relationships in movies and pop culture. So
what are your thoughts on the porn industry? Do you think that it is ethical, helpful, educational, or do you think there's a harmful aspect to it?
About the porn industry or about porn? Because those are different.
Porn. We'll go with porn.
This is something I get messages about all the time, and people ask me about in sessions all the time. Like, do you think porn is bad? And I'll be real, Alexandra, I don't know if my opinion matters. I don't think my opinion is important on that, whether this question of is porn bad? Like, I treat it as, I don't know, are blueberries bad? Like, would you say blueberries are bad? Would you say alcohol in itself is bad, right? Like, maybe you would. I think alcohol is like a more dicey one, but if somebody came to me and they were like, Mike, I feel like I throw up every morning, throw up 3 times every morning, I have a terrible stomach ache, and I'd be like, okay, are you eating anything? And they say, oh, well, I have 3 gallons of blueberries every night before bed, right? Be like, well, I think you have a blueberry problem, right? I would never suggest that blueberries are the problem. I eat blueberries, I have, a handful of blueberries, I'm fine. But if you're eating 3 gallons of them before bed, that, might cause some indigestion. So do I think the porn industry is a bad thing, or porn is a bad thing? I don't know if that matters. Do I think it's really important that we teach people how to use it in the same way that we would teach somebody how to drive before we gave them a Ferrari? Yes, I think that is critical. I think how people engage with it is critical. Do I think there's room for porn to be more inclusive? Yeah, definitely. Do I think porn itself is also changing? Yeah, definitely. So I think there's room. I don't think it's just this one thing where we can say porn is good or porn is bad. I know some couples for whom porn saved their relationship. I know, some young men for whom porn probably saved their life because it was a coping mechanism for them when they felt isolated, scared, traumatized, and alone. And at the same time, I know that trying to have a sustainable relationship or a sustainable and enjoyable sex life based solely off what you learned in porn is kind of like trying to drive to your grocery store based solely off what you learned from Fast and the Furious.
I think that I wasn't trying to get on, is porn good or is porn bad? I think porn can be a useful tool for somebody to explore their sexuality, to understand what sort of kinks or fetishes or curiosities they might have. On the other hand, I think that a lot of porn is depicting pleasure still as male-centered, and that women are really there as more of an object to have sex with than to also center her pleasure as well, and that's really my issue with porn.
Totally. And that's why I was speaking about, why I feel like there's a lot of space, or, I wish there was more education around what was actually happening in porn and like what they're looking at, and about more inclusivity, right? Like I do think the industry is changing, right? There are far more female directors now than there were 20, 30 years ago, right? And I'm hopeful that will, continue a trend away from the objectification of women's bodies and centering men and men alone. But yeah, I would never in a million years suggest that porn, like, oh, are you looking to learn about sex? Have you tried Pornhub? Right? Like that would never be something that comes out of my mouth, right? That's not where I would point people. That said, when I'm working with, for like a couple where they really trust each other and they feel bored and they don't know how to have conversations about sex, I might point them towards certain, directors or organizations where I'm like, hey, why don't you guys just watch this video together, watch it for 10 minutes, and then here are the questions I want you to ask each other and ask yourselves, right? In that sense, I think it can be great. I also don't want to yuck anybody's yum, it's like, I watch a ton of action movies all the time. I'm not going into the streets with a sword, that's not, they're not going to know the difference. They're not going to know that this isn't actually the babysitter, right? Or that this isn't actually her stepfather, right? They don't know that. So without the education, yeah, I think porn can be dangerous, but I would never say porn is dangerous. I wouldn't go that far.
Do you believe that there's a rise in polygamous relationships today? Do you believe in ethical non-monogamy can be truly practiced ethically?
You're trying to get me in trouble with some of these questions. I love them. I really do. I think a lot of folks are tired of traditional relationship structures, rules, and expectations. I think a lot of people are exhausted by the idea that they can either be monogamous or be a slut, right? That those two options, it's I don't know, there's a little room for nuance here. And so I think this term polyamory or ethical non-monogamy helps folks who feel like they want to exist somewhere in between. Maybe it's the behavior is the same, we're just putting a new label on it, if that makes, if that helps people sleep better at night. Do I think that non-monogamy can be practiced ethically? Was that the question? Absolutely. If you are communicating, if you are considerate, if you are careful, if you study up and read about it, that's a lot different than just throwing "I'm non-monogamous" on my Tinder profile, right? And sleeping with whoever I want to, right? Because, but I said I was non-monogamous. No, that's manipulative, right? That's abusive. But if this is actually something that interests you, I just see it as any other form of, I kind of approach it like a form of queerness, right? Like, which is to say anything that isn't love between two cishet people of opposite genders. So why not?
Why do you think there is such a fear or a taboo around masturbation?
Textbooks would point you to, like, you know, the very religious background of this country, and you know how some of that rhetoric is there. And I don't know, I don't necessarily see religion and pleasure as antithetical to one another. I exist as a human being who both identifies as religious and loves my pleasure, right? So I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but I do think that rhetoric is very much ingrained in our society, that masturbation is naughty. I think we fear what we don't understand, Alexandra, and when, you know, one generation has been repressed and told not to do something, then they don't do it and they don't understand it. We do this with everything, right? We do this with so many forms of pleasure and joy. I don't know, I'm very much of the mindset that you, by nature of being born, are entitled to your joy and your pleasure. And if that looks like baking cupcakes and watching Netflix, then it's that. If it looks like masturbating, then it's that. If it looks like travel, then it's that, you know, whatever it is.
What sort of influence has pop culture had on your beliefs around sex?
Well, so I'm 39. So my growing up was Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake breaking up, and Justin shouting all over media about how, oh, he hit that and this and that. And so I think I probably would have been much more sexually promiscuous or more present in my own sexuality or my queerness younger, had society allowed me to be without immediately being like, well, you're a slut or you're a hoe, or if I like was with one of my like best friends, another female friend, for too much or too often, I was a lesbian. When I am a lesbian, but it was such a negative connotation at that time that I wasn't able to really step into my queerness until I was well into my 30s.
You know, as a millennial, I think there was like this drive to sex in like MTV and music videos and pop music and skimpier clothing on, or like less clothing on women and things like that. So I think it's definitely put that on the forefront of minds, especially like folks around my age. Hip hop and other forms of music have like given men this kind of directive, like, yeah, you should be having sex, like it's great, and it is. But I think it's definitely influence of like the music and our time that we're able to see more images and hear more influences of pushing sex, because sex does sell, as they say.
I think some of the difficulty for me to parse with pop culture stuff is that personally, like I'm 31 now, I've had a long time to explore and see what I like and don't like. I do kind of fall into the stereotypical male mode of pretty much always wanting to have sex. I have a very high sex drive. Like if I'm with a partner, ideally it's at least once a day, if not twice a day. There is like that chicken and egg problem. Like, am I like this because this is how I am, or am I like this because people told me this is how men are supposed to be?
Do you think pop culture allowed you, empowered you to step into your queerness, or did you get messages elsewhere that opened that door for you?
I think I opened the door for myself. I really just decided I was gonna do it, and I was gonna find a way that made it feel safe for me. So I wound up finding a all-women's play party company and going to all-women's play parties in San Francisco, where I lived for a long time, and then running the parties all over the country. So I was able to not only find a place where I felt safe to explore, but then also in that one night of a party, which is really just debauchery, but then say I can take that feeling away and say, well, not only do I feel comfortable sleeping with women, I feel more comfortable with myself exploring female friendships with queer women and being able to explore how then that progresses maybe into a relationship or into overlapping relationships.
Do you believe having sex with a prostitute is morally wrong?
No. Sex work has existed. It's known as the world's oldest profession. We've done it throughout history. there's nothing new about it, and there isn't really anything wrong about it either.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it, mainly because, you know, our bodies are, throughout history, have been used in multiple ways to like build pyramids, to travel seas, to do labor for others. And I think that this form that I'm given at birth, you know, I should be able to use how I see fit and earn money in ways that work for me, and in some scenarios it might be sex work, and I think that should be allowed for myself and for others. And so on the flip side, I do not feel like it's a moral wrong to pay for a prostitute.
No, absolutely not. I think that having sex with a prostitute is a wonderful way to explore something that you maybe don't have anyone else to explore it with. It's a wonderful way for people with disabilities to be able to have sex in a way that is safe and comfortable to them. I think it's a wonderful way to explore maybe someone that you're interested in, but maybe don't want to have a serious relationship with, or don't want to put in the time to get to know them in a more personal way, but you want that sexual experience. I think that's absolutely no problem.
And this is The Politics of Sex.